Welcome to the Well Woman Show, where we interview women executives, leaders, and entrepreneurs.
And you're listening to the Well Woman Show,
where motivated women achieve fulfillment and well-being.
You're listening to the Well Woman Show.
Take time for myself by coming to things like Well Woman Drinks.
To be accepting of myself no matter what. Step away from judgment as much as possible.
You're listening to the Well Woman Show.
You're going to be in for a good ride. I don't regret anything. Everything I've ever done, I've learned from it, one way or another, good or bad.
Being a little bit selfish for yourself, put your own oxygen mask on first and then give what's left.
I'm a woman. I would prefer to tell my own story. My story, though it's very personal, is universal.
You're listening to the Well Woman Show. And now your host, Giovanna Rossi.
Hi, Giovanna Rossi here, and welcome to another episode of The Well Woman Show, where I interview women leaders, executives, and entrepreneurs about their lives and their road to becoming and being who they are today. Are you at the top of your game professionally but feeling burned out, or finding it hard to focus on your goals, or unfulfilled personally? Or are you in transition, simply juggling so many things you find it hard to take care of your own needs? Well, you're not alone. We all need to activate the 4 universal superpowers. These are the internal strengths and abilities we all already have but don't use all the time. Superpowers can be cultivated, and they include awareness, intuition, action, and acceptance. Toward the end of the show, in a segment called Superpowers for Success, I ask my guest about her superpowers, and the answers will give you the strength, perspective, and power to live a well-woman life. I'm so happy you're here, so thanks for tuning in. This episode of The Well Woman Show is brought to you by Collective Action Strategies, supporting organizations that support women and families, and by Well Woman Life Movement Challenge Quiz, your resource for living your best life. If you're in burnout or major transition, this is your time to figure out what's holding you back from making the changes you need to make in order to live your fullest, most joyful life. The cause of all of our challenges, personal or professional, can actually be rooted in the lack of internal superpowers and or external supports. Our Well Woman Life framework tells you which stage of the Well Woman life cycle you're in and what to do about it so you can truly live your best life. You can find out more at wellwomanlife.com/quiz. I'm so thankful for support from Natural Awakenings Magazine in New Mexico, a monthly green, healthy lifestyle publication, and for support from High Desert Yoga, promoting optimum physical health, clarity of mind, and spiritual inspiration for all. Hello, well women. So today, the topic is how to say no so you can say yes, one of my favorite topics of all time. And actually, on the show today, we talk about a lot of different things as usual, but this particular theme really jumped out because we went into some detail about it, and I love to talk about saying no. So for those of you who struggle with boundaries and saying no, or just need a refresher, this is going to be a great episode for you. And one little tip right up front I'm going to give you is when I say no, I try to say, thank you for thinking of me for this. I am going to need some time to think it over, and I'll get back with you. What's your deadline? And that's a great way to give yourself some space rather than that scenario that we've all been in where we're thinking to ourselves, oh God, no, I can't do another thing. And yet the words, yes, I'd love to, come out of your mouth. So to avoid that, definitely want to create some space for yourself to process and respond thoughtfully to whatever the person is asking you to do. And that includes your kids, by the way. It can be used for family, for work situations, really anything. So this is going to be a great episode. My guest today is Samantha Michelle, and she is a very interesting woman who is living in New York right now, but is originally from Canada, and just has an extensive background, and she's still quite young. And She's done a load of different things, including studying at Oxford, where I went to high school. So that was a fun little connection. She's actually a DJ and an actor. And so we talk a lot about that on the show. And you'll even hear me tell my story about being a DJ myself back in the day. So stay tuned for a great interview with Samantha Michelle. I'm speaking with Samantha Michelle. Welcome to the show.
Thank you very much. It's very nice to be on the show. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, I'm excited to talk to you. We don't often get to chit-chat with DJs. Usually I interview a lot of women entrepreneurs and leaders, and so this is going to be a nice mix it up a little here. And so, Samantha, what are you up to in the world? I did a little intro already, so people know your kind of bio, but what are you doing? What are you putting out into the world right now?
Well, lots of different things, I suppose, is the answer. I sort of divide my creative work under 3 categories just to keep myself from going completely insane. The first category is, spreading my love of soul music and rock and roll and good times and good vibes. And so I'm doing lots of DJing, and I feel really lucky that I've been able to partner up with, publications and charitable organizations and work with clients who I find myself very sort of soulfully aligned with. Tonight I'm DJing for Flaunt Magazine for their New York Fashion Week party, and I think that they're quite a cool publication, and they're all about supporting badass women, and I'm absolutely into that. And then this weekend I go to Toronto, and I'm DJing for Artists for Peace and Justice for their Toronto Film Festival Gala. And they basically support education and well-being for youth in Haiti. So they're a phenomenal organization to be working with. Then when I come back to New York, I do some more DJing for the Morrison Hotel Gallery, and they're like an iconic rock and roll photography gallery. They were probably my first ever favorite art gallery that I fell in love with when I was a teenager. And the work that they present is really, really cool and really interesting. And Marcelle, who's the gallery director, is just completely brilliant, and she curates the shows so fantastically. So I just feel very lucky to be able to work with clients that I just completely back and get behind. So that's pretty cool. So that's what's happening in the world of DJing. Then I'm also a filmmaker, and I'm inching into production on a new short called In the Campfire Light, which is, I say it's inspired by Springsteen's Ghost of Tom Joad album, but when you read the script, the inspiration material it's not really at the forefront. It tells the story of a dejected ballerina dancer who kind of finds herself in this acting class in New York, and she encounters this acting teacher who's almost like a guru-esque character, and he's incredibly intelligent and incredibly charismatic, and he's schooling his students not only on how to become, the most dynamic and interesting actors, but also, how to become truthful, honest, and engaged living human beings. And she sort of falls under his spell a little, and it explores, psychosexual power dynamics and, the susceptibility of our dreams to the exploitation of bad people, for lack of a better term. I think it treats a lot of issues that are quite culturally relevant at the moment in a way that very much embraces the gray, which is what I'm interested in as a filmmaker. I think, often we abstract things into this is wrong and this is right, and in that process of abstraction, we kind of lose sight of what lies at the foundation that gave rise to the conflict. And that foundation is a rich tapestry of highly complicated themes and ideas. And then I also act in things. I love to act. I think it's really fun when you're given a great, rich, exciting character to get to go on that journey. I worked on a film in Canada in June. And yeah, we'll see what's happening next on that front. So that's my world at the moment.
Okay, that's a lot.
Yeah, I realized. I was like, oh, Samantha, you've been talking for a while.
No. That's a lot. You're involved in a lot of different things in those three areas, and you live in New York. We were talking before we started recording. You live in Greenwich Village. How, Samantha, how did you start doing all of this? Because aren't you still in your early 20s?
Well, I'm 28 now.
Oh, 28, okay.
So I've been sort of doing this all now for, I guess, close to 7 years, since I graduated from university, really. And I don't know, I think as a kid, I didn't really have any sense of clarity as to what I wanted to be when I grew up. I danced competitively and I loved dance. And I think part of me always kind of got off on the adrenaline of performance. But then I also really liked writing, and I was always very interested in expressing myself in different ways. But yeah, I had no idea really what I wanted to do. And when I moved to New York at 17 to go to NYU, it was kind of like everything was just fair game. And I was taking lots of different classes and studying lots of different things and running around too many nightclubs. And then when I was at Oxford, I had this kind of amazing experience, because by that point I'd kind of whittled it down to another sort of three options. I tend to work in threes in my life. And I was like, well, either I'm going to go to graduate school and I'm going to carry on with this whole reading and writing thing, or I'm going to work in events or PR or charity or something, because at the time I was producing this couture charity gala bowl thing for Help Malawi, which is a really cool organization that benefits children in Malawi. And I was really enjoying my work with that. And then I was also acting in these plays. And so every day was kind of split between academia, events, and theater. And not knowing anything about how difficult any of those industries or professions might be, I was just kind of like, well, acting seems to be the thing I'm enjoying most. So maybe we'll try that. Mm-hmm. Again, knowing nobody in the entertainment business, having no idea that the entertainment business was particularly competitive. I just kind of hopped in and hoped for the best, really.
Okay. And so you didn't pursue a graduate degree. Is that correct?
I did not, no.
And do you think you might still do that?
Every once in a while, I think about it. I would love to, I think. But because of what I ended up doing at NYU, I sort of built my own major within the College of Arts and Science. And so I spent my senior year doing independent study and working on this thesis that explores the role of religion in the rhetoric of U.S. foreign policy. And I worked really closely with this amazing professor who's single-handedly responsible for changing my life. She's passed now, which is pretty heartbreaking, but she's called Marilyn Young, and she was a hero of mine. And so I sort of had the opportunity to do that kind of work at an undergraduate level. However, I think going to graduate school would be pretty amazing. I would love to do creative writing, or I don't know. We'll see. One day at a time.
Well, I thought that was interesting that you explored the role of religion in the rhetoric of foreign policy. What was your thesis, or what was your main idea there?
So my thesis was called Playing the Part of Prometheus, America's Assumption of Divine Duty. And basically what I did is I bought this book that had, 100 of the most important speeches in American history, something quite simple. And I took a highlighter and I just went through every speech. And every time I encountered, rhetorical terms and Judeo-Christian ideology, like manifest destiny, city onto a hill, light onto other nations, acting as God's mortal hand on earth, I just kind of highlighted it and put a Post-it on it. And then I sort of mapped out a pattern of these ideological constructs and looked at how they fit within what was happening in terms of foreign policy at the time, beginning with westward expansion all the way through to Obama's regime, and just looked at these sorts of patterns and how various foreign political endeavors were contextualized and presented to the American public in, fundamentally religious terminology, and what that tells us about the psychology of, America's national identity and self-perception, if it could be said to even have such a thing. But I remember I wrote this 10 years ago now. No, well, 8 years ago. And I think the country, I think the country's always been a series of states, but I think in the last 8 years, the individual nature of the various states and political camps in the country have, the gaps between them all have only broadened.
Yeah. And what about the last 2 years?
It's an interesting time. It's a very interesting time I think obviously there's a lot of disgruntledness in the air, quite reasonably. I think it's a cool time because I think people are are really getting in touch with their political identities, and are very keen to take action, and that's really positive. And sometimes things have to not go our way in order for that to happen. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, totally. That's really the only way I can look at it and to make any sense of it, because otherwise it's just too depressing. But I think that we are being provided an opportunity to take things in a different direction and to act differently. Yeah. And I think people are stepping up, and we're seeing that in women running for office, in such huge numbers this election cycle.
I think it's a really exciting time for women. I think it's probably never been so cool in the history of, well, I don't want to say the history of the human race because I'm certainly no expert on that, but like in the history of a long time, I think it's a really, really cool and really exciting time to be female. And we're half the population, so it's it's going to be one hell of a party.
Okay, so why is it such an exciting time to be female?
Well, I just think there's a lot of opportunity to engage in discourse without censorship or restriction. I think a lot of that is facilitated by obviously the internet and social media. And that has, its own whole host of unideal byproducts. But I think one of the positive things about this new technology is that, everybody has a microphone and everybody is free to share and to engage with each other regardless of where they are. I think people are forming digital communities, and obviously there's great strength in numbers. And, I think obviously living in Greenwich Village, I'm exceptionally privileged to live, amongst like-minded folks, generally speaking. But I think, there's a lot of people who don't have that same sort of privilege, and perhaps within their immediate surroundings are not seeing, models of women that they would aspire to be like, or they're not connecting with the people who share their same philosophical or political perspective, but they can hop on Facebook or hop on Google and they can find resources and communities to feel less alone in whatever their ideology might be. And I think that that's quite cool. I think, in terms of if we look at Hollywood, which is something that I'm obviously interested and invested in, with the casting couch sexploitation, which is what my first film, The Dark Side of the Sun, is all about. And I made that film, 2 years ago, like explicitly with the intention to kind of pull back the curtain and expose casting couch sexploitation in Hollywood. And so it's particularly thrilling to see that that's all really come to a light, and people are starting to have conversations about what's been going on since, the beginning of the industry, and certainly in a number of other industries. And I think that that's creating, a culture of carefulness, and carefulness is fundamentally a good thing. And I think, what's happening as a result is that women are exploring different, because all of this is gray and complicated. Do you know what I mean? Not to say that somebody who is the victim of sexual exploitation in some way, shape, or form has in any way brought that upon themselves, but sometimes in some cases they potentially have, or it's been encouraged, and it's all this kind of thin line that's weaving back and forth. And obviously there are plenty of instances where it is not a thin line, but there are plenty of instances where it is. And I think what's happened is because of the parameters and the practices that have been in place that are so deeply entrenched. I think women have felt pressured to rely on their charm or their beauty or their sensuality or their sexuality in order to advance themselves. And now, because that isn't, an accepted, approved currency any longer, I think that's forcing women to, forget about the men and whatever's going on with them for a minute. I think it's forcing women to look inwardly and go, all right, well, what's important that I put out into the world? If I'm, I don't know, going to a dinner party tonight, like, okay, cool, what am I going to wear? How am I going to do my hair? What shade of lipstick? Fine. But also, what am I going to say? What am I going to talk about?
Yeah.
What's my opinion going to be on the subject at hand? These weren't questions that were part of a woman's preparation for a social gathering in the 50s and 60s, and to a certain extent, even 6 months ago.
Yeah, right. Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
And I think that that's really cool.
Yeah, I mean, we're definitely seeing more a clear movement, for women to step into their power and use their voice, and I think that we're at a very interesting point where women need a lot of support to really be that and do that.
100%. I think certainly in my work and in everything that I do, I really try and make a conscientious effort to reach out to other women and connect with other women. Like just last night, I met with this DJ who I stumbled across on Instagram, and I'd never met her. I just wrote to her on her website and said, "Hi, I'm Samantha. I'm a 60s and 70s soul DJ. I moved to New York a couple months ago. Like, looks like you're doing, phenomenal work, and you're working with some really amazing people. Like, I'd really love to just, pick your brain and ask for your advice." And we met yesterday, and she was lovely and awesome. And, I hope we get to hang out again. Maybe at some point down the road, there'll be an opportunity for us to collaborate in some creative way. Maybe there won't be, but I just think that it's interactions like that are really important.
Yeah, totally. And the idea of having a mentor too, that you brought up earlier, and you said your mentor in college had passed away, but do you rely on other mentors in your life, other women?
I think I could probably use another mentor or two, to be honest, but I think there's a lot of people in my life that I do rely on, both men and women. I'm exceptionally close to my dad. He's my best friend, and I absolutely rely on him in everything that I do. My mom is also an amazing, incredible force of a woman, and she's exceptionally inspiring and exceptionally helpful, and she always knows the right thing to do, and I think I'd be quite lost without her as well. I've got, the most amazing network of very, very close friends who I've known for a long time. And those are the people that I turn to when I'm a little lost and a little confused and a little stuck what to do. And I think because I've lived away from home for 10 years, my friends have really become my family. And I think I would be absolutely nothing if it weren't for the people in my life, that's for sure.
Yeah, it's so interesting. I speak with hundreds of women leaders and entrepreneurs, and the common thread that always ends up coming up is the need for a network of women and of support and mentorship. So
100%.
Yeah.
Community is everything. People always say, if you work really hard, you can make your dreams come true. But I think that's wrong. I think if you give and if you contribute and if you forge connections, that's when your dreams will come true. And hard work is absolutely important. But, and everything that I've ever hoped for in my life that's happened, from plays that I've wanted to make to films that I've wanted to make to, opportunities I've wanted to have, that's only ever been possible because of the kindness and generosity of the people in my life. Absolutely, without question. There's nothing I've done on my own.
Well, and you have to be in a place where you can accept that, right?
Exactly.
And really be open to people influencing you and helping you and mentoring you.
Yeah, there's this, Walt Whitman poem that is, probably one of the most quoted poems ever. And not butcher it. Hold on. It's in Dead Poet Society. Yeah, Oh Me, Oh Life. This is definitely the most obvious poem of probably American poetry. And and I am no poem expert, but like it's just something that I sort of revisited recently that kind of reverberates in my mind like day after day. And the poem's amazing. It's this little short thing, where he talks about how difficult and fundamentally challenging life is by its own definition, and then he kind of goes, well, what's the point of it all? And he sort of poses a question and offers the answer. And it says that you are here, that life exists, an identity, that the powerful play goes on, and you may contribute a verse. And I think that those last few words there are, it's like it's what sort of sticks through my mind day in and day out, like that idea of contributing. I think as ambitious people, certainly as creative ambitious people, where our hearts are so involved in everything that we take on professionally, you can get kind of caught up in pursuing everything that you're pursuing, whether it's, finding more gigs or making more films or making more money or gaining more followers or whatever it is that you're working on. And your energy can be quite like take oriented, for lack of a better term. Like, what am I getting out of today? What am I getting out of this meeting? What am I getting out of this interaction? What am I getting out of this job, this encounter, this experience? And I think actually like the point is quite the opposite. And when you live your life in such a way where you think, okay, what do I contribute to every interaction, phone call, experience, opportunity? What can I give, albeit, possibly tiny? You live a much happier day-to-day experience.
Well, yeah, and not only just sort of get through the day-to-day experience, but really start living your dream.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah, I love that. So, Samantha, talk a little bit about your 60s and 70s soul DJ experience and what that's all about.
Well, I love the music from the 60s and 70s. I think that there's just something about, I don't know, that time period, what was happening socially and politically, and, the way in which blues music was reinterpreted in England and in America, and that is just kind of completely magical. And it's my favorite music to play. It's my favorite music to dance to. It's what, I think gets in the blood and in the bones and makes the sort of magic happen. And so that's kind of become my specialty as a DJ and what I like to play. And I've been doing this for quite a few years, so I quite like to keep things interesting and diverse, and I like to sort of skip between different genres and move into a bit of early blues and kind of move a little later into some disco and some 80s stuff and maybe even a little 90s hip-hop occasionally. But I don't know, I think the music from the 60s and 70s just makes you feel kind of amazing. I mean, it's the birth of rock and roll as we understand it.
And how do you incorporate, or do you incorporate your feminism or, sort of critique of the world in your DJing?
I think I definitely do. I like to sort of champion female artists, and I like to play a lot of, kind of lesser known female artists, or sometimes incredibly rare female artists. Like there's a girl called Little Denise who did, 2 singles in like the early 60s when she was 14 and 15, and she's amazing. Sugar Pie DeSanto, complete legend, but people who aren't necessarily big soul music fans maybe have never heard of her. I like to play like call and response songs, like Annie Williams' version of I'm a Man, Patty Drew's version of Hard to Handle, where these artists are kind of shimmying the lyrics a little to present the subject matter from a female perspective. In the canon of soul music, there's a lot of examples of that, where they just sort of go, instead of I'm a man on the street, it's I'm a girl on the street, and kind of reclaiming their own feminist right to the song. So I really like to play those sorts of records. I love to play covers by females of songs popularized by men. And I like to play artists that people have never heard of, or certain maybe haven't heard of in the kinds of environments that I'm playing in, like Thelma Houston and Mary Clayton, and these names might be obvious to some, but they're certainly not Aretha Franklin and Etta James, who are obviously the goddesses of it all. But I think it's sort of nice to make clear that there's a huge canon of incredible vocal powerhouse, female vocal powerhouses,
and so
appreciated.
Yeah. And so when did you break into like bigger gigs and being paid and flown, around the world to do DJ gigs? Like, how did that happen? If there are folks listening out there who are like, well, I like to DJ too. How could I do that? Was it like one thing that led to a bigger opportunity, or was it just, did it build? How did that happen?
Do you know what? It's like anything that I've experienced creatively. It's like the ocean. 1 minute the wave seems thunderous and like it's rushing and something big's happening, and then the next thing you know, it's a bit calm, and then another wave comes. Like, my adventures as DJ started as a happy accident, and then I was kind of engaged in like, the grind of it, like doing gigs for free and playing back to back with friends who were teaching me how to use equipment and helping me figure out what my sound might sound like. And then, just plugging along, trying to do gigs for however much money I could find, like here and there. And then I sort of took a break for a bit and was working on a play, and somebody who I'd met years earlier, who I guess I'd once mentioned to that I did some DJing, was like, hey, could you do some DJing for this event for me? And I was kind of like, well, no, I've sort of decided to take a break from that. And he was like, well, I'll fly you here and pay you pretty nicely. And I was like, okay. And then, the guys who had organized his event really liked what I did, and they were like, could you do that for us tomorrow? And I was like, well, yeah, if you pay me what he did. And then, at the time I'd just written The Dark Side of the Sun, and I was very keen to make it and to make it straight away. And I knew I needed a little bit of money in order to do that. And so I'd sort of made the money that I needed to make this film over the course of these 2 DJ gigs. And I was like, okay, like maybe I should do some more of this DJing thing. And then, it was back into the grind of it all, and working 3-4 times a week for not necessarily big bucks. And then a big opportunity comes up that takes you somewhere, and you think it's all happening. And then, you go back to working 3 or 4 times a week for not a whole lot of money. Like, I think that's the thing. I think I'm not a superstar by any stretch of the imagination, but my experience of creative success is that it's not when the ball starts rolling, it rolls. It's like when the ball starts rolling, it rolls for a bit, then it stops, but it will roll again.
Right.
It's kind of the narrative. It's not as soon as it starts building, it just builds and builds and builds, and it seems to build forever, and the next thing you know, you're on top of the world. Like, you climb for a bit, and then maybe it's like 5 steps forward, 4 steps back,
right.
6 steps forward, 3 steps back, 1 step forward, 2 steps back, and all you can do is just like keep trying to climb, right?
Yeah.
What else are you going to do?
Well, that's so
and
interesting.
Not get discouraged,
Yeah, keep going and not get discouraged. That's a big one that we could do a whole show on that. But I wanted to just call out something that I hear in what you're talking about, and I know is definitely something that I talk a lot about with the Well Woman community, which is setting boundaries and knowing where your own boundaries are, because it sounds like a couple of those big opportunities came when you had set a boundary for yourself. Like, no, I'm not going to do that anymore. I'm taking a break. And then lo and behold, he was like, well, I'll fly you there and pay you. And then, that created that opportunity. And then again with the next one, like, well, someone else wanted you to do it the next day. And you were like, okay, if you pay me the same. So setting those boundaries.
Yeah, I think one of the big mistakes that I've made in my 6 or 7 year career across the board is saying yes to too much.
Yeah.
I think one of the things that I'm only learning now at 28, and I wish I would have known this before, and a very dear friend of mine, I think it's been an integral part of teaching me all this. It's like, no is a very, very, very powerful word. And, you have to be prepared to lose. And you have to, know that that's okay to lose. to just go, I'm not going to do that. Maybe I'm missing out. Maybe I should have done that. I don't know what else I'm going to do on that day. I might be sitting at home watching Netflix. But, like, I'm prepared to take that kind of gamble in life. I think for years I was so afraid of missing out on opportunities and making the wrong decision or pissing somebody off or being too big for my little boots or whatever, that I just I took a lot of stuff that I shouldn't have taken in every sense of how that phrase could be interpreted. And I just did things that I shouldn't have done and agreed to things that weren't right for me and made sacrifices I didn't need to make. And I think, honestly, only now am I going, do you know what? No. And it still feels new and weird. Like, just the other day, like, somebody calls me and asks me to step in and fill in and do this, this part in this play. And I'm kind of like, well, I'm sort of free, but I kind of have other stuff on. And I'm not really sure that this is all that creatively interesting to me. And then the whole thing was handled a bit weirdly. And then they called me again, like saying, hey, could you come and do this? And I just went, do you know what? No. As much as I'd love to, like, help you out, and I love being on stage, and I love doing plays, and I love theater, and it'd be great fun to do a play in New York, like, nothing about this is right. Nothing about this is right. And I don't want to be in a situation where I have to get on the stage and be part of something I don't believe in. Like, I've done that before.
Yeah.
And it was, a big, big, big mistake.
Well, and that requires a level of awareness and intuition and really knowing when to say no.
Yeah, 100%. And I think, again, it's difficult because it's a balance because, on the one hand, you kind of, when you're starting out at something, you sort of have to do everything and take everything just to learn and get yourself to a place where you're confident. But I think that's what it is. I think there's lots of things that I wouldn't, I'm in different places in my different careers. I'm like, as a filmmaker, things that are as embryonic as can be. I've made it like a handful of small films. I don't know what I'm doing. So I'm going to like be in my little boots, and I will go and like gratefully accept the opportunity to shadow anybody because I have so much to learn. I didn't go to filmmaking school. But as an actor, I've trained in half a dozen different conservatory programs around the world and started a number of plays, and I'm not in a place where I'm gonna, commit to being part of something where I just don't think the writing's very good and I don't think I'm gonna learn or challenge myself. You know what I mean? Yeah. So I think it's good to just have a good sense of where you're at, not in terms of ego or acclaim or even your bank account, but just where you're at in terms of your ability to do whatever it is you're trying to do. And if you think you've got a way to go in terms of learning, then just say yes as frequently as you can. But if you feel like you're in a place where you can confidently do the job, because in every job there's always more to learn, then just trust your instincts and know where your boundaries are. Because so long as you keep moving, if you say no to an opportunity, like on that day, you'll be somewhere else, and that will be where you're meant to be.
Yeah.
And you'll be grateful that you're not stuck in whatever you shouldn't have said yes to.
Yeah, right. Yeah, no, that's good. So Samantha, I'm going to move us on to the final segment here called Superpowers for Success and ask you a few quick questions that really allow the audience to get to know you and learn from you, although we've already been doing that. But before we do that, I just want to share that this whole conversation has just brought up a memory of mine that I really haven't thought about in a while that I want to share, which is funny to me, which is that I started doing DJing for our local radio station here, and years ago, it was my outlet for creativity and fun because I had a very serious policy job in politics and everything. And I started doing DJing on this radio show for women's issues. And so I would play a bunch of women artists and stuff. And it was so much fun. And the station, the news manager was like, we want you to do a segment, a policy segment because you're a policy person. And I was like, no, I'm not going to do it. I don't want to do that. I want to DJ. And so I continued doing that for a while. And then finally I gave in, and I started doing like a segment on more to do with my work, and then that actually turned into this radio show, this podcast. So it's kind of
I love it. So it all started with music. That's amazing.
I know, it's really funny to think back to that. So all right,
music is the heartbeat of all good things, isn't it?
I know, it really is. It really is. So I love that. I love that connection, and I don't think I've ever shared that actually on my show. So that's a little tidbit.
Amazing. I love that.
Yeah.
So crazy how one thing just leads you to another that leads you to another. It's like following the breadcrumbs of life, isn't it?
Well, yeah, exactly. And I mean, I'm quite a bit older than you, so you still have all of those breadcrumbs to follow, and you have so much more to do in your life. But, when people ask me, like, how did you end up doing what you're doing? And, it's like there's never a straight story. It's like the line is so curvy, and, like there's never a straight, like, you should do this because it will lead to this. Like, no, just do, like, I don't want to sound like just very flippant about it, but, follow your authentic, true self. And like you said, what can you contribute? Like, how can you serve? And that will lead you to the path.
100%. 100%.
Yeah. So, okay, so let's wrap it up with our little segment on superpowers. What does success in life mean for you?
Oh, it's a good question. Smiling as much as possible every day, 7 days a week. And in my sleep.
Right. Okay, and when did you know you were really good at what you do?
I still don't know if I'm really good at what I do.
Okay.
I'm just going with it and trying to get better.
Nice. Okay, and then describe a personal habit that contributes to your own well-being.
I write in my journal every morning. I've done it every single day since I was 22. It's the best thing I ever did. I've never reread a single entry. Like, I do it when I'm half asleep. It's like brushing my teeth. I don't even notice that I'm doing it anymore. Mm-hmm. But it's like giving your mind like a shower, scrubbing off all the dirt from yesterday and making yourself all nice and clean and fresh for today. And I can't recommend it enough.
Do you do it at night or in the morning?
First thing in the morning.
Yeah. Nice.
First thing in the morning.
Did you happen to read The Artist's Way?
I haven't, but somebody's told me about it, and that's what originally got me onto this idea. But then I'm not very good at doing things that like people write about in books because I feel like it's not my idea. So I was like, I'm not going to read the book. I'm just going to build my own little version of this. Yeah. And for the last 6 years, I have a series of moleskin notebooks because it has to be a moleskin. It's only ever been a moleskin. Literally for 6 years. So if I don't have any moleskin paper, I'll rip one out of an old one and write it on the back. And every day I write, like I have to fill one full rules page. If I got more on my mind, it can go over. But it's like I just look to fill the page. So I never really know. It's not like I write a sentence and then I'm done. There's a set kind of space to it. Yeah. And again, I've never reread an entry. I don't have any intentions to. It's not about like chronicling where I'm at for some kind of eternal preservation. It's just a way of exercising like all of the things that I running around in my head that aren't really going to be of value to me for that day. And a way of revving myself up for whatever is going to happen that day. And cultivating a relationship with myself. That's quite fun. Me and me have a great time.
Well, yeah. I mean, when you do that kind of journaling every day, it really allows you to connect with yourself instead of disconnecting and living unconsciously.
For sure. For sure.
So I interviewed Julia Cameron, who wrote The Artist's Way. And so for listeners, if listeners or if you, Samantha, are interested in that interview, go back through. It's an early episode. I'll have to put the link in the show notes since we talked about it here. I'll put the link in. And she walks you through she has like, I mean, there's a lot in that book, but she has like 3 things that you can do. And they're really awesome exercises. One of them is journaling every day. Okay, so let me wrap this up here. What superpower did you discover you had only to realize it was there all the time?
Oh, that's a really interesting question. Wow, that's a really interesting question. I think I'm good at, like, it's sort of difficult to put into words, but like I'm good at building an energy, and I think that's what DJing is really about. You know, forget music taste, forget the technicalities of it, and I think that's what, you know, being a filmmaker is about. And I think in a more intimate kind of way, that's what being an actor is about. Is creating this energy between, you know, yourself and the people around you, and building something that's spirited and you know, oriented around community. And I think I've only realized lately that that's maybe something I've done like my whole life, you know. Like I was at this sort of detox center in Austria with my dad in June, and he was there for a couple of days before me, and I was DJing in France, and he was sort of writing to me being like, it's so boring, nobody talks to anybody, I can't wait for you to get here, like sending me a bazillion emails a day. And I was like, don't worry, Dad, I'll be there tomorrow, we're gonna have a great time and drink all the tea that we can and whatever. And I got there, and I saw exactly what he meant, because nobody was talking to each other, everybody was just sitting in their robe reading their magazines and drinking their tea. But by the end of, you know, the second day, like we had a group of friends, and we'd all have our broth together in the evening, and we went on an outing to this like little village during the day, and we'd all, you know, sit in the sun at 4 o'clock in the afternoon together. And you know, one of the nicest things that my dad said to me, he was so cute, he sent me this like funny little card in, you know, in German with a pig. I don't speak any German, and then sort of wrote inside, because he stayed for a few days after I left, because I had to come back to New York for work, and he was like, I really miss you, and like this place misses you. There's a different, the energy here is different without you. And I was like, that's maybe one of the nicest things you've ever said to me, Dad. And then it sort of made me realize that maybe that's sort of one of the common threads running through what I'm involved with creatively, is that and maybe this really also ties back to this whole you may contribute a birth thing, like, which is kind of reverberating around my mind in the moment. And maybe I'm just figuring this all out as I'm answering this difficult question of yours. But I think, you know, I think building that kind of energy around me, and then reveling in that energy is kind of what I've maybe done my whole life, and what I actually am really passionate about doing.
Yeah.
You know, creating things that we can all feel a part of, even if that thing is completely immaterial.
Yeah. I love it. Okay. And what advice would you give yourself 10 or 15 years ago?
Oh.
Say 10 years ago, since you're 20.
Okay. There's so many things I wish I could have said, but like probably my favorite sentence in the English language, which is kind of two strung together into one, but it's all going to be all right, I promise. I think that's what I wish I could have just said to myself. You know, I think because I'm so engaged with my full crazy head and my full crazy heart in everything that I do, you know, with every like setback and rejection and loss and seeming failure and whatever, you just feel like it's kind of going to be the end of the world. And it's really difficult to see that actually the universe has got your back and it's sending you where you need to be. And sometimes like those hurdles are really the things that are shimmying you in the direction that you need to go into. But just that feeling of it's all going to be fine. Like that whack of perspective. Like you have your health, you have your family, you have your friends. Everything that you need is literally within your being. And yes, it might need time to come to fruition or effect, but it's inside of you. And so if that one thing doesn't work out, if that one person lets you down, if that one opportunity doesn't materialize, it's all going to be fine. And I promise that reassurance for yourself, from yourself, I think.
Yeah, I love that. Okay, and do you identify as a feminist?
I think so. Yeah, I think so. I've never been like too big on like terms one way or the other, because I think they can mean lots of different things to lots of different people. But, you know, I think depending on one's interpretation of feminism, I believe in the great, you know, magnificent power of women. I believe what women are is equally capable as men. I think that we're also wonderfully special and different from men. And I think that, people are people, and each person is totally unique and different from the next person. And gender is a part of our identity like any other detail might be, but it certainly is not one that in any way divides weak from strong, because I'm eternally amazed by the strength of the women in my life.
Okay, and last question, Samantha, what are you reading right now? What's on your nightstand?
Actually, I'm reading this play called People, Places and Things, which I saw in London a couple years ago, and I loved it. It was honestly the most powerful piece of theater I've probably ever seen in my entire life. It's by Duncan Macmillan, and Denise Gow, who inaugurated the role. I mean, she's just, honestly, it's the most exceptional female performance on stage I've ever seen. And I don't know what made me want to reread it. Sometimes if I see a play that I really, really love, I kind of like to go and read the play, because when you're watching it, you're sort of caught up in the experience. And then, I don't know, maybe it's because I'm an actor, or I love theater, or I love the way that people's minds work. It's kind of nice to then go back and look at what was exactly said and how it was strung together and what the mechanics are of it and how it looks on the page. And it's just, I don't know, it's pretty extraordinary, actually.
Awesome. Okay.
And I highly recommend it.
All right, we'll link to that too in the show notes. Samantha, it's been such a pleasure talking to you today. Thank you so much for being on the show.
Oh, thank you. The pleasure is all mine. It's really kind of you to have me. These have been very interesting questions.
That's it for our show today. Remember, if you need support to live your Well Woman life, head over to wellwomanlife.com/Facebook to join us. Our monthly live event, Well Woman Drinks, brings women together to share our successes and challenges as women, leaders, moms, aunts, sisters, and all the other roles we carry. If you'd like to attend a Well Woman Drinks near you, or if there isn't one in your city yet and you'd like to start one, email info@wellwomanlife.com. If you enjoyed the show, please take a moment and subscribe in iTunes and leave a review. This helps raise visibility, which is super helpful when it comes to producing the show every week. For feedback, comments, or just to let me know you were listening today, find me on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram @WellWomanLife. I'm Giovanna Rossi for The Well Woman Show. Until next time, have a super powerful week.